Okay. Good evening. As a preliminary matter, I am Tina Burgos, member of the Needham Human Rights Committee, and I will be chairing this meeting. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Cynthia.
Here.
Is Carrie here? No. Amelia? No. Belinda will not be joining us tonight. Bud?
Here.
Marlene?
Here.
Julie?
Here.
And I am here. Okay. The open meeting of the Needham Human Rights Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the Corona-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting is a webinar and will allow the public to comment. For this meeting, the Needham Human Rights Committee is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, I will afford public comment as follows. I will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once I have a list of all public commentators, I will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call votes. Okay, so I see Carrie. Hey. We thank you for sending out your edits. Marlene, does anybody else have any edits to the minutes? Are we good? Okay, so can we approve? Do I need to do does somebody need to make a motion to approve the minutes? I don't remember. It's been so long.
You're supposed
I
to.
move that we accept the minutes.
I second
as-
Okay,
as a edited or something.
okay. Cynthia,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Bud,
Yes.
Marlene,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. So the minutes from our last meeting in October with the edits made have been approved, and I will submit those for posting. We have, Miles, you said just Renaz for public participation?
Yes, that's correct. Renaz is our only public participant at this point in time. There are no attendees currently in the Zoom room.
Okay, great. Hi, Renaz, thank you for joining us. I don't know if you got an email yet, but I think interviews are currently being scheduled.
I can handle that.
No,
Renaz
no,
will likely.
I haven't, sorry. You can go.
you'll likely get one from me tonight, if not tomorrow, as we begin to finally schedule interviews.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. No, I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Miles. Hi, Amelia.
Tina, do you want to have Miles introduce himself or introduce him?
Sure. Hi, I'm Miles Tucker. I'm the Support Services Manager with the Town of Needham in the Office of the Town Manager. For those of you who knew Sandy Sincata, I sit in her seat now. And I'll be working with committee chairs and the vice chair of the select board this year and moving forward to help fill vacancies and conduct interviews for select board appointed committees and commissions. Today, I'm filling in for Katie King, who I know normally staffs the meeting. She's out at a conference, so it's great to meet you all, and I'm excited to witness my first meeting of the Human Rights Committee.
Thanks, Miles.
Welcome.
Hi, Amelia. Okay, so I'm marking you off here. Can she hear us? Okay, the first item on the agenda is was proposed by Jen. It's a community education event. I'm not sure if she's going to be able to join us tonight or not because she had a work issue come up at the sort of late in the afternoon. So do you guys mind if we move on to the next thing? Hopefully she'll be able to join us because I would like her to speak on that since that was her agenda item. Okay, calendar of events. So I've been thinking about it just sort of for efficiency's sake and for planning. It seems like we're always kind of scrambling at the last minute to try to organize events around major things that are happening during the year. So for example, Martin Luther King Day or Juneteenth or, Indigenous Peoples Day. So I was thinking of maybe we could come up with collectively, not in this meeting, but we can circulate a shared document of holidays or days of remembrance or things that come up. We can sort of make a list for 2022 and then early in the year decide how we want to either mark those days. Do we want to actually have an event or any sort of try to do some community outreach, or is it simply, NDI is handling that particular event and they always do it every year annually. So we should reach out to them and just help them cross promote whatever efforts they're doing. I just wanted to touch base with you guys on that because it's a little bit of administrative work, but I feel like then we're not sort of scrambling at the last minute to try to figure out, what are we going to do for this and that such and such holiday or event or something like that.
I think it's a great idea to have a shared document that we can all contribute to, and then as things fill up each meeting we can discuss. But I love the idea of like a shared Google Sheet or a Google Doc that we can all see and contribute to. That's just my opinion. I think that's fantastic.
It'll also be helpful for me because I haven't been through a full annual cycle with you guys and also with so many organizations doing things. So many of you are involved in other organizations that really do a lot of work around things that HRC doesn't do, again, because there's so many things to plan. So I just think also for keeping things organized and straight, it might be helpful and, to see what's coming up. And the scrambling makes me very nervous and it's a little stressful. So Marlene.
I think it's a really good idea. I think primarily we don't, except for Juneteenth, we don't run any of those, but we do co-sponsor. And so I think that's important. So I think to have a calendar like that and it organizes us, I think it's a great idea.
Bud.
I totally agree. And where so many things are done on Zoom these days, like in the past with Martin Luther King, we've picked up the refreshments and things like that. So to know what we're doing and what responsibilities we might have in the coming year is a great idea.
I'm happy to help you administer that, within the Needham Human Rights Committee Google account.
Okay,
And I'm totally happy to do that.
okay. Cynthia,
I like the idea of it also being in conjunction with other groups in town, just as we've had some of those informal things with NDI and EJR. But there are other groups too, like bringing you a couple things one's from the Clergy Association as a
Yeah.
whole, the others from selected clergy. But that's an example of every year there's going to be the Thanksgiving service.
right,
Before we leave this, I wanted to have some time this evening talking about the planning ahead, not to wait until December or God forbid, January, to think about if we want to have any role in the Martin Luther King Day program. And so, I mean, you may want to wait until December, but I want to make sure that gets flagged to do in advance, because we've
So-
often thought about it. Oh, let's have a statement, and then we go, egad, it's too late, or,
do any organizations in town currently do anything for that holiday?
It's
Yeah, we
NDI.
have.
It's always
most-
NDI.
yeah.
NDI,
NDI is the main one, but it's co-sponsored. And for at least a couple of years, Human Rights Committee has made a statement, or maybe it was just 1 year. They're looking for things from groups. So it's not like lockstep, it has to be planned by NDI. So it's, and where Amelia and I are on both groups, it makes it easy to kind of bring ideas up. So if people had an idea right now, we haven't really started planning that. It could go right in there and say, well, why don't I heard this storyteller, or I heard this performance, or I heard this singer who I think would be really great. And then you say, well, would NDI be willing to put that together? Would Human Rights Committee be willing to put that together? So it's wide open for any of the sponsoring groups to either offer a statement or ideas or work with people.
well, I definitely think we should put together a statement at the very least. I don't know, what do you guys think? At the least, right?
Yeah.
What has HRC done in the past aside from just sponsoring?
Well, as Bud said, we took on what I think was an important role of providing refreshments, but we were also a presence. I felt like we were welcomers to people. Here, welcome, have some coffee or whatever. And that was a really nice way of being involved. So I think it was Jen who wrote a statement a couple of years ago, and we stood up on the stage with her. Amelia, can you remember if other things we did? Or
We
Marla?
were our name tags. We always,
Yeah.
we have NHRC name tags. Or we used to.
Also,
Right, and we also had not really a booth, but a table with information.
right. And I
Yeah.
facilitated that, and initially as a representative of the Human Rights Committee years ago, organized what David liked to call an expo. So we invited groups working on social justice, whoever we could reach out to. And Cynthia helped in setting that up too.
Yeah, that was at the NDI.
That was at the
summit.
summit.
It wasn't, I'm sorry, that
Yeah,
was,
but
yeah.
Marlene is correct too. The people who were sponsors were allowed to have a small table, so it was only 3 or 4. And I think Baha'i
yeah,
people sometimes came in, not necessarily Baha'i, Smitty's group. What's the name? I forget the name of that group, because he often presented at the MLK Day. So we were able to have a presence there in a couple of different ways. And again, you don't have to do things the way we can't do them the same way on Zoom. So, but I
And where,
appreciate hearing ideas right now. That's really great.
was it pre-pandemic? Where was it typically held?
High school
At the
auditorium.
high school.
And then it got moved to Pollard several years ago, because they felt that was it was smaller, So it was
Yeah.
more focused in terms of the interaction. It was easier for people to find. People were my husband invited his tutee from the ESL program from China, who was really interested. And she brought her family, but she could never figure out how to get in. And there were things like, it's an easier venue for people to get to and use.
So given where we are with the pandemic, though, I'm assuming you guys this is going to be a
It's
virtual
Yeah,
this year, right?
yes.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other initial thoughts or ideas of what we can do? Hi, Jen, virtually to
Oh, Jen's here. Great.
make more of an impact for this event?
Jen, this is the MLK Day program. And I think a couple of years ago, you wrote a statement or we read something that the Human Rights Committee had written. Was that the time we got the town to approve the statement that's somewhere on the website of the town?
I'm not sure. we could probably
But
look back on that.
Do you remember doing that and standing up to read it?
I remember doing it at an event at the, I think it was at the
Wasn't it the
Congregational House Church.
Trans
Yeah.
Remembrance Day?
Yeah.
I think it was
Well,
that.
I think it was an event to support question 3. I remember doing it then. I don't remember doing it at the MLK Day.
I don't remember it at MLK either. I don't really remember us doing anything except sort of welcoming and being there and doing the refreshments in the past. So
And
Yeah,
having
we
the
had a
display.
little table at the lobby, and Jen had
Yeah.
like a trifold cardboard thing, and we all wore our name tags. Yeah, it was that kind of a thing.
A couple of us joining in the singing, but other than that, that was our participation.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, they randomly asked people. I remember standing and reading one of the names of
Yeah,
the people.
a number of us did those too.
Yeah, but I don't think it was just. It had nothing to do with the fact that I was part of HRC.
Mhm. So it's an opportunity. I don't know how far along we will be with the discrimination complaint process, but we were already hearing at the summit, some people were saying, where do I go with this thing is happening at school or this thing is happening in home, so that if we're anywhere along the way with that, that would be something that you might want to share.
I wonder if
Okay.
it's something that we could put in the program that they create for that event, like an announcement of like how to get in touch if people have concerns.
Yeah, it would probably be a slide if it's on Zoom.
Oh, right.
Right. We know what you mean.
Okay, so let's,
Think about it.
yeah, let's think about it. And Cynthia, when do you guys think NDI is going to start discussing, just so that we are working towards a complementary versus overlapping efforts?
Amelia, isn't it probably, I can't remember when the December program is, but I think that's,
Yeah, I'm sure it's the next meeting. We always start. in
yeah,
November.
but I don't know that, I would have to look up the date, so.
Okay,
So if people could come up with things by, let's say, the first week in December, I can look it up, the dates,
That's next week. No, it's the weekend.
week after, please.
Sorry.
Thank you, Tina, for taking some time with us.
Eileen, just because Hanukkah's early this year doesn't mean that the end of the month is here yet.
Have a lot going on, so I want to get.
yeah,
through it.
ideally, it would be great if the NDI planning, your meeting was before our next HRC, so that, again, we could piggyback off of, and if I can attend the next NDI meeting, a couple of us can attend that, then we can, I think it'll help spark some ideas and some conversations so that we're not waiting until the last minute.
I just checked my calendar and I Cynthia, do you see a date for December? I I may have forgotten to put it in on my calendar. I'm sure we'll meet usually the same week. As we usually meet on a Wednesday just before our meeting.
Okay,
I can't find it either. We met November 10th, so if it's. So we can at least let you know when it is, when we find out. I can try sending an email to Rebecca while we're meeting too.
okay, great. And in the meantime, if we could gather ideas by, you guys want to email ideas and I can compile everything? Or we could even put them in a shared doc by the first week of December. So then we can, you know, collaborate with NDI with something a little bit more tangible.
So we're looking to have some kind of contribution to that day more substantive than what's happened in the past.
Yeah. So the conversation, it sparked from, I have been thinking about all of the events and the days of remembrance and holidays that happen annually. And I feel like since I've been involved, we're kind of scrambling at the last minute, or it's like, oh, this is coming up, we need to sponsor. So I was thinking of making a shared calendar Google Doc that Carrie's going to help me with, that we can all contribute to, so that at least we can see, you know, what's happening in 2020, 2022, and just try to be a little bit more organized, and we can be a little bit more proactive versus reactive.
Great.
Okay. We're going to circle back now to the January agenda item, which was a community education event. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, and you had an idea for a potential topic, as did Cynthia. So, and then we can brainstorm some other ideas if people have other thoughts on that. But Jen, why don't you tell us what you have in mind?
I don't have anything in particular in mind. I just was thinking that, you know, we've been concentrating on doing the complaint process, which is of course super important, and the response network, like there's all these other things. And I think we haven't had a NHRC sponsored education program for the community in quite a while. I feel like the last one may have been around with the organization that it was like the Human Trafficking Path, Needham Path, I think was the last one that I can remember. So anyway, I was just thinking that, you know, I know that there's a ton of programming going on in town, but that it might be a way, you know, for us to do something, you know, to own the program as opposed to just co-sponsoring all these other things. But did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was recently talking to Dane and Constance Perry, who came before us a number of years ago regarding the thing that they were doing around the country. They've developed a couple other things that they're doing. So what I would like to do is reach out to them and see what programs that they might potentially be offering, and pass it on to everyone in this group before the next meeting.
So I'm sorry, but what is it, the name?
Cynthia? You went to a number of things that Dane Perry had done, and Constance regarding.
I'm trying to think of the name of the.
Dane's family were holders of slaves many years ago, and he and his wife, who have gone around the country to community groups, churches, other houses of worship, and doing a presentation about you know, slave ownership, and but they've developed a couple other programs that I don't know a lot of detail about, but I can get it and pass it on to everyone.
Yeah, I'm trying
My
to.
memory was that they charged quite a bit, and that and we don't have funds for that. So that was just to add that piece.
Okay, I'm trying to remember the name of the film, but it's been out there, and it's a fascinating story because people in the Perry family discovered that they had this untold history being involved, the whole family, with slave holding and slave trading in Bristol, Rhode Island. And as they did a study of it, they decided that they would retrace the path of slavery. Was it to Ghana? It was West Africa. And so they took the family there and they made a film of it. And then when they came back, they all made a commitment to do something to try to reverse the legacy of slavery. And his commitment was to take the film around. And I had a chance to see it at the Episcopal Church, has a whole kind of network, a whole structure of how you work with it. And as we considered it, I know there's the money, but we could have gotten the money. I think the sticking point was we needed to have a way for it to be deeply embraced by the community. And that it would have, we thought about, for instance, the high school, that as an evening program, it's good. But if we were, the real thrust is how you deeply get engaged. So if they have some other programs, it might be easier for us to conceptualize how we could use it without having access to that deeper way of a community.
I can find out. It's called Traces of the Trade, and you can Google it if anyone wants to look as to what they've done in the past, but I'll find out about their new programs.
Traces of the Trade, that's the name of the film.
I'm
Excellent.
sorry, what is it?
Traces of
Traces,
the
okay.
Trade.
Got it, thank you.
So one of the things that I had got me thinking about this was around the election down in Virginia that was so focused on education and the critical race theory. And then I don't know if anybody listened to the podcast. It's called South Lake, I think it's called, that NBC, I think, produced. And it was about a town in Texas that had, it's kind of like a whole long story, of course, like all podcasts, but basically this town had, in response to a couple of racist things going on at the school, invested all this time and money into creating this DEI plan for the school district. And then when they went to go implement it, basically, other people in town who maybe hadn't been paying as close attention to what was going on heard what the plans were and like lost their minds, basically. And so this podcast was kind of like how this town that was primarily white, affluent suburb in, I think it's outside of Dallas, maybe, had kind of grappled with this issue, because all of a sudden, once people were hearing about what was going on, there was a section of the town that was really upset about the way that it was being handled, and it came down to this situation where people started throwing around this, anti critical race theory teaching in the schools, and kind of that whole myth of that even being taught in the younger grades. But so it just got me thinking, and I don't know, I know that like Wellesley's got a whole bunch of things bubbling up for them. And I think, I don't remember if we talked about it at this meeting, but earlier when the school started this year, Principal Seacott got called out in like a Breitbart article for, the kind of advocacy that he was doing with the students. So I feel like it's like something that, I don't know, maybe not everybody is thinking about in town. So I don't know if we bringing it to the town would create a problem, or if it would be something that would be a good space to be able to really educate people about what critical race theory is and what it's not, if that's something that we would want to try to bring in to the town.
Marlene?
I think it's a great idea. I don't know who we would get to do that. But I think it's really important for people to know, as you said, to demystify it. I was talking to someone recently and she said, I really don't know why we're talking about critical race theory. What we need to do is just teach the truth about American history. Well, it's really
plain history. Yeah.
And that's what it is, right? And I thought that was a great way to think about it.
Cynthia?
Hey, Jen, you're on Newari, and I think that they're talking about community conversation on race, is it? They gave out these little cards and I don't really know. I think that's an intention. It seems to me like what you're talking about would be something that could happen in that context, but maybe they have in mind small groups, developing trust. I don't know what they have in mind, but that's the kind of, so you say, have the community conversation before something is thrown out that people say, we didn't know this was happening, but to try to have it earlier on.
Tina, you want to fight on that one?
It's exactly what we're dealing with then with the outreach, the community conversations on race with regards to policing. I mean, it's extremely timely, and I do think that there is a lot of misinformation about the CRT. You know, I don't know. Did you guys ever have to read Howard's Inn in high school or college? So, I mean, this is not a
I read it
new,
like 2 years ago.
it's not a new
I read it in
concept.
college.
It's been around for a long time. So it's just now at the forefront because people are screaming a little bit louder than they used to. I think it's a great idea. It was just a matter of trying to figure out what format would be, I guess, most effective.
So I guess the way, I mean, the planning for the community conversations has been very deliberate and slow, honestly.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, and it's taken us like 6 months to come up with an almost plan for the first one. So I don't know, like, I feel like it wouldn't happen very quickly. And that this might be a situation where, not that I want to have something that doesn't include conversation, but that maybe just some plain old education would be useful. And so that if we're billing it, not necessarily as, you know, having a community conversation on it, but as a learning opportunity for the community to, again, kind of just, what is this? What do these words mean? And what do they not mean? You know, and maybe it's something that we could collaborate with, like the Real Coalition or something, like, because, you know, I think part of demystifying it, really, maybe this is too into the weeds, but, you know, talking about what that is versus what is, you know, the equity plan that the school has been implementing for years now, and, you know, where the intersections are and where there's, you know, they're not. So I don't know. I feel like we might be able to internally plan something that would happen more quickly than if we wait for it to come up with.
I mean, I could envision something like, you know, finding the appropriate person to go ahead and talk about the concept and what it is, what it isn't. And then maybe at the end, you know, maybe in advance, people could submit Q&A. So it's almost a little bit of a hybrid of a conversation, but it's not to that point where we're doing breakout groups, or that's a little bit more heavy lifting, right? I mean, at this point, and then who knows, we could see where it goes after we have this education piece and a Q&A session afterward. If it's something that people really want to continue to discuss further down the road, or have more, you know, it brings up more questions than it does answers, then we could spin something else off beyond that. We don't have to figure it all out now. But to start the conversation, I think is a good idea.
I just Googled speakers on critical race theory, and it looks like Guilford Human Rights Commission proposes a speaker on critical race theory. I will take it upon myself to look up, you know, and see if I can find some speakers that might be appropriate and share it with the group.
That'd be great.
Cynthia.
Hey, I really like Jen's idea about the Real Coalition, and I'm thinking about that evening we had with the school department that never got around to the discussion part, but the first part of it was really good. And I like the idea of, instead of just an expert telling you, that maybe if you have an educator, a parent, maybe a clergy person that you have from several, you're saying, well, what is this? And you can get a different level of interest when you have different voices saying, well, you know, as a parent, when I grew up in school, this is what I learned, and now I hear my kids coming home with this. Or as a teacher, I've discovered at the high school, and I know the Real Coalition has representatives of different groups. So it's just a thought about, but I like where Jen is coming from. We need to have learning or education before you can have as meaningful a dialogue.
Who would be a good person to reach out to at Real Coalition, Jen?
I'd be happy to do it. I don't think they've had any meetings this year, at least not that they've invited the larger coalition to. They're probably working in their subgroups, but I can reach out to Mary Lammy at the schools, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, but I have it written down somewhere, the woman who's in charge of community engagement. So we could talk with her about it. I mean, I don't know if that opens up a beehive for them or not, but it seems like it would make sense to at least loop them in to talk about it before trying to plan anything.
And where NHRC is supposed to help with community engagement, you can say, hey, we're thinking about this. Is there a way we can help with this? So that you've got an actual role. Excuse me, Amelia.
Amelia?
I'm just thinking about having another lecture or another presentation and just giving people the facts, the information. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we could have people come and express their concerns and start there. And hopefully reach out to those people who are objecting and who are misinformed, but to hear their perspectives and begin there. Somehow reach out and invite people to come and begin the conversation there. It just concerns me. We're talking to the choir. We're not reaching out to the people. And if they hear another forum where they're going to be told the same thing they're hearing on the news or in their houses of worship or wherever, they're not going to come. We're not going to reach those people. And I think that's where we really need to focus in our community right now. So maybe having a call for questions somehow to encourage people to express their concerns and share them with others because they're important, and we want those people who we're inviting to feel welcome, to feel comfortable enough to share those points of view. So if we could sort of set the tone for that kind of presentation or event, I think, and from my perspective, I think that would really be important.
So I guess part of, like, how would you frame the conversation with them? Like, to come and talk about what they think about the curriculum in Needham, or what kind of changes have happened, or what the curriculum now looks like?
What about critical race theory? You know, just the term.
Yeah, I think you could be even more general and say, like, what are your questions about critical race theory?
And your concerns, or
I guess the part of what my goal for an event like that would be, to that the people would understand what critical race theory is. And so I think, like, coming at it with what are your concerns about it, I would like to be able to help dispel some of the myths, because I think a lot of people think it's something that it's not. And so that's, I guess, what I'm struggling with is, like, how we could frame it. Because I know, you know, like, on one hand, there's value in having a conversation to hear what people's fears are about it, and all that. But I do think that even just being able to try to really define it for people and understand what it is as part of kind of the as opposed to starting with tell me what you think about it based on what may be a misunderstanding about what it is, as opposed to being able to hear what it is and then tell me what you think about it.
But I think it would be good for us to work with the schools and target the parents in the schools for this kind of a program. And I think it's a good point that we want to all be starting on the same page, because if we just ask how people feel about it, they may not be talking about the same thing.
Right.
You know, they may have misunderstandings about what it is.
Tina, I saw Renaz raising her hand earlier. I don't know if you noticed or.
Renaz,
Hi, sorry. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to add a comment. Like when my kids went to Pollard and when my daughter was picked on based on her race and religion, I didn't know that there was a human rights committee or someone to go to explain my concerns. You just go to the school and you say that they called my daughter that she belongs to ISIS and this and this, and like she's a Muslim and she was in a refugee camp, and all these stuff that really hurts. The school was like, we're sorry, but there's nothing we can do, right? So now my kids are older, but I really don't want any other parent like Black or Latino or Muslim or from the Middle East to be picked on. And then they hear from the school like, we're sorry, we know you're right, but there is nothing we can do. They're just kids. I'm not saying they need, like, maybe I can share my story, maybe I can share, because I tell my stories usually like in Boston College, in all around. And I don't mind sharing my story and what happened in school, but maybe we can put it in a better way so we don't target the school, because they were really like, especially the superintendent and Tamatha Bibo, they were very supportive, but there was no action taken at all. And I wish there was some people like you I knew about to come to and talk about my concerns. I don't know how, but we need to make it like more accessible to people to know that we're here for them. Sorry, thank you. That's all.
that's a great point, Renaz. Yeah, so I guess there are a few things happening. It's sort of format, perspective, and then how do we reach people that are outside of the circle in which we are comfortable.
Can I suggest that a subcommittee work on this? Because I don't think we're going to be able to tonight get it all
No, we won't. Yeah.
worked out, but maybe if a subcommittee could work on it and bring some more clarity to the next meeting.
I think that's a great idea.
I'd be happy to work on it with if someone else would join me. Jen, would you?
I can.
Yeah. Why don't Jen and I put our heads together and form a collective rock pile and see what we can come up with?
And then as soon as Renaz is appointed, she can be on the committee.
You can,
She said yes.
Renaz, I'd love you to be an ex officio part of the subcommittee until you're appointed.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Renaz, it's amazing how long you've held on here, considering how long it's taken to get you finally appointed.
Thank you, Amelia. She keeps pushing me like, well, I want you to be there, and I really want to be there too. Thank you.
Okay, that sounds great. So if you guys want to coordinate, let me know, because I'd like to join in the meetings as well. We can figure out some dates when we can have some initial conversations about it. Cynthia, you had an idea as well with regards to getting to know our neighbors.
Mhm. Hey, I can, I think, say this fairly quickly, and again, we're not going to plan it in one evening. At the Clergy Association meeting, we were hearing about ways to help Afghan refugees, and people who are involved with Temple Beth Shalom may know that they are supporting a family. The family actually came a few weeks ago, and they're opening it up to the community for people to be involved. And then the International Institute of New England, who the local Needham area Immigration Justice Task Force has been supporting, and we've supported when Suitcase Stories and some other programs have a network of people who are volunteering to help welcome refugees that will mainly be housed in Lowell and some in Boston. So there's two different efforts going, and the International Institute of New England does a volunteers training about the nuts and bolts of how you put together meals or collecting clothing or whatever. And they also, and I just started going to it, didn't finish it today, have a 2-hour training on understanding Afghan culture, which is absolutely fascinating. So talking about that with the Clergy Association, Denise Garlick sometimes comes to that, and she said, I'm really interested in that. I think that's something we need to do in our community, is to have another or have more educational things about getting to know our neighbors. So it might not be just Afghanis, but people coming from Southeast Asia, Middle East, coming from cultures that perhaps there aren't very many people of, and how to, it's sort of chipping away at the other by getting to know people. Each time you get to know people, you may see somebody and say, oh, that's like the person I heard speak. That's a person I could invite over. That's a person I could get to know. That's a person, if I hear my child come home and say things about them, I'll sit down and talk about, what's their country is like and what it's like for them being here. So it's just an idea. I know the Human Rights Committee partnered with the task force to do some programs about understanding immigrants. We worked with Muslim community, and specifically with Abdul Asmal, who was on our committee, that we got a program that came from the Islamic Center in Wayland, that some of us from the Human Rights Committee went and heard the program, then we said, let's bring this to Needham. And it was getting to know our Muslim neighbors. And we had a lot of people who don't usually come to things. And some people said it's the first time I ever heard a Muslim speak. And I think there was genuine shifting. And then we had another program the Human Rights Committee did later on with the man who was a graduate of Needham High. So we have a history of making this kind of contribution to our community, of expanding their understanding of different groups and cultures. And right now, where there are a number of people coming from Afghanistan that, and again, this isn't something we need to do tomorrow. It's just an idea to put out there.
I like it. I think it's, again, it's timely, it's relevant, and it's something that's happening in our community. Do other people have thoughts about this? Amelia?
I have met over the years people that used to be on the Human Rights Committee way before I was on and Cynthia and I were on. And they talked about having events that the Human Rights Committee planned that focus on individual groups. I think Iran was one. They had, this is pre-pandemic, where people met in person. And they had an event where a specific group of people came to talk about their culture, and they had food, and they had very much like Chinese Friends of Needham do in the Chinese New Year. So maybe that might be something we might think about doing again after things hopefully get back to normal, where we have in-person events.
Mm-hmm.
But
I do have a question, Marlene. I don't know the family that Temple Beth Shalom is sponsoring, but the temple that Beth Elohim, family that Temple Beth Elohim is sponsoring, they're not living in the Wellesley community. So I think the program is certainly relevant, but how many people from Afghanistan are living in Needham?
So this family that the temple's sponsoring is only living in here temporarily. Needham is not an ideal place for an
Right.
immigrant family to
Right.
live. And probably they will end up being permanently housed in Framingham. That was the last that I heard, because there's more of a community there and public transportation and jobs, and housing is much less expensive, but they are temporarily here. Very nicely, a family who also took in maybe 2 years ago, a Syrian family.
Mhm.
The same family is housing this Afghan family, just a very I don't know the people, but Needham family.
Yeah.
So but that's
Amazing work's being done. In fact, the family that we're sponsored have a child who's already an American citizen because the child was born here.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have that too, because the mom is pregnant. The family that the temple has, they have a baby and they're pregnant.
So if we do want to do something, it could be something highlighting, as Amelia said, more than one culture or country too. And I know the World of Wellesley used to do this phenomenal kind of cultural day at one of the churches or someplace. It was a huge auditorium and they spent like a year planning it. And it
That was at
different.
actually community at the junior college in Bay State.
Yeah.
I think is where they had it.
Yeah, and that the Immigration Justice Task Force used to do welcome dinners, and we would try to get through any contacts we had, invite groups, and sometimes they would do like a dance, or there was one night we had where it was a potluck and people would bring a dish that represented some part of their culture, and at some point in the evening, people went around and spoke, and it was just an informal thing. We ran out of people to coordinate them. It's not that hard to do. One of the best ones was at the Chambers Street, where we had a large number of residents from the housing, including some performances by a Chinese group of singers, and they had a man who translated for them. And it was just a splendid kind of afternoon of people who often feel isolated. And we had a group of people coming in eager to meet them. And it was, there are many groups that could do that kind of thing. Maybe could be a catalyst, time to say, okay, let's if we're thinking about some of the groups like NDI, Progressive Needham, and so forth, well, if we have a month that we call Get to Know Your Neighbor Month or something, and invite every group to do something so that one group isn't doing this thing that takes a whole year. And one group could say, get to know our Haitian neighbors. We have a partnership with the Haitian American Church for 20 years in Waltham. We heard from them that they are welcoming people who have no home, who've come from Haiti. And so we're involved. That throughout our community, there's probably lots of connections.
That's great. I like that. I like that idea. Do you think that's something that sort of what I'm hearing is more impactful if we can do something in person? So I think we can start noodling around some ideas, maybe do a picnic or something that, but that will take time to forge relationships and figure out who are the right speakers and coordinate. But that doesn't mean that we can't start figuring out something, down the road for next year. Is that
Even
sort of
some
envisioning?
Yeah, even some of the people who come to the Resilience Network, where the idea is to reach out to some groups that aren't usually at the table. Might be a place to not to ask them to plan it, but just to get connections.
Okay, I like it. Let's start sort of figuring some things out and see what we can come up with over the next few months.
That could be a really neat kind of event to have to launch the network. Are they planning on doing that anytime soon? Does anybody know?
I don't think so.
I think they're launching their, the group that's for families of middle school age kids, that they had a card at the, was it Voices in Unity Harvest Fair somewhere? Or maybe I got it in the mail, at any rate, who knows? But that they are trying to recruit people. They do have the funding. Maybe Marlene or somebody knows more. They got Beth Pinels and Nicole got funding for that particular project. So that will be starting.
I don't know anything about that.
Well, let's sort of continue our brainstorming on it, and let's try to, in the next couple of months, we can try to solidify some more ideas around that. So with regards to the community education events or community events, we've got the just to recap, we've got the subcommittee that's going to discuss critical race theory and how to best approach that. And then we also want to talk, try to develop some sort of getting to know your neighbor series or event or series of events. Hopefully something in person. And we can try to figure out who would be the best folks to involve with that. Sound good? Okay. Amelia, do you want to talk about recap the summit?
Many of you were there, and I'd love to hear your point of view, but for those of you who were not, the program was titled Voices of Unity, and I think the theme really carried through the program. I felt that first of all, the keynote speaker, Gary Bailey, was just incredible. He's such a joy to listen to and converse with in the Voices in Unity meetings, but I thought he really excelled. His presentation was excellent.
Was it recorded?
It was, and I think Rebecca Young said that it might be on the NDI website. I checked yesterday and there was nothing posted. So the breakout sessions were not recorded, but I think all the other elements of the program should be some of accessible to the
Yeah, his talk was amazing.
Yeah, he was great. There were 139 people that I saw, and we had close to 300 last year. So I don't know if the weather was too nice, or people are just burning out, or they're just spread too thin. But the people that did attend have been sharing information and through NDI about how much they really enjoyed the entire program. I thought the panel presentation was excellent. Was facilitated by Kim Marie, and fortunately Marcus did join at the end. He had a death in the family, but he was able to join. The conversations were just so interesting, and people expressing their points of view. The video by Maya Angelou was just so touching, and she has various versions of that. And then the breakout sessions, I attended the one on Indigenous that was presented by two Indigenous women, and it was quite interesting. So, but I would like to hear from others. Who else was at the Zoom call? What are your impressions?
Marlene?
I thought it was great. Like last year, I thought, oh, how am I going to sit on Zoom from 12 to 4? And I said, there's no way. Well, there was no way that I would not it was all so engaging. You guys did a terrific job of diversifying what you did to keep us all engaged. And so I thought it was really good. The breakout group I went to was not what I thought it was going to be. I went to the one that the league did, and there were very few of us. But what I was really they talked about how our government is, how Needham is set up with the select board and who's elected and who's appointed. And for people who don't know that, that would have been really interesting. But I really wanted to know what was going on in terms and where they were with civics education, because that's, to me, especially with all the stuff that's going on with the voting rights, I think we just have been doing a disservice around civics education. So I think our kids just don't know. And I don't mean just our Needham kids. I mean, everywhere. Anyway, they never got to that piece. So, but they did a really nice presentation. And did you know, if anybody watched the league last night, Needham, Massachusetts League of Women Voters is the largest league in the Commonwealth, and the only one that has a student group at the high school, which I thought was pretty amazing.
That's great. Carrie?
I loved it last year, even though it was virtual, and I thoroughly enjoyed all of the talks and the presentations this year. I do think, though, honestly, 4 hours is too long. I think maybe 3 would have been better. Although it didn't seem like there was a giant drop off. There certainly were drop offs as it got closer to the 4 o'clock hour, but it's very well done, and the panels were engaging, and it certainly was. I very much enjoyed every piece that I attended. I did feel very fatigued at the end. I just think 4 hours is a very, very long time. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but I do think it was extremely well done, and I'm so happy it happened, even though it was virtual. And again, last year I also felt the same way. Like, I was happy I attended, and even though the sun was shining outside and it was a beautiful day, and it still was, it was worth the time. I do feel like a Zoom event that long is a little too long, but that's just my opinion.
I have one other thing that, Tina, if it's okay, that I just wanted to say.
Yeah.
During your presentation, or right after your presentation, I got a text from somebody who said they didn't know that the Human Rights Committee was in transition, and did I think that the Human Rights Committee was going to move away from being affiliated with the town. And I was totally shocked with that. And it said to me, we need to do a whole lot of PR about who we are and what we're doing. But I was just shocked. So I just thought I should tell you that.
And
Yeah,
Tina, I loved Tina, I loved your honesty. The way you presented and really told it like it is. And I thought that was great.
It's funny because the next day I got a phone call from one of the select board members asking me if I was okay.
Oh, no, I think it was refreshing. I think you were genuine and you were yourself. And I thought you did great, Tina, and I appreciate you getting up there and speaking honestly.
He was very concerned about me. So I had to it's okay. It's fine. Everything's fine.
I heard a number of people, well, everybody I know really liked the kind of remarks that people said, that it was engaging and interesting. And some people said, well, the chief wasn't as personal as the other people in that panel. We said, this is the first time John Schlittler has been involved with the program. And as the chief, he has to speak very carefully about things. When Marlene and Amelia and some of the rest of us got to know him when he was the representative in the Human Rights Committee, and that wasn't given in the bio. That would have been kind of nice to say. For 6 years or whatever, he faithfully attended the meetings and listened to things and worked with us on the concerns and the programs. That it's very different. But when you're up in front of people, I mean, I think it takes a lot of courage to share things personally. But if you're also in this kind of role with the community, we can only ask so much of people in that setting. And that I think it was really great that he came to that, and that the other people like you were, like Tina, I'm looking at people, who knows where other people are and other people's screens, like Tina, were able to be personal, and like my neighbor, Toyin Olatuni, where I've heard him, he's on Nuwari, and I've heard him speak that way before. And I'm just so pleased that he has gotten that involved in the community, because we've seen him since they moved into the house and seen their kids grow up and so forth. And that he would say in some other setting, he said there's at least once a year something happens that makes him feel really strongly about why am I living in Needham, but that he would care enough to come and be part of the panel. So that's the kind of thing that I think is, even if it's quote, the choir, I think it's really important for people to hear. And just to what Carrie said about the 4 hours, we had another hour after that of people who were behind the scenes and texting one another and saying, well, we run out of time for this, that, or the other thing. Well, we did run low on time, and the breakout groups got shortchanged, and it went from around 98 people to 68 when we counted the number of people in the breakout groups, which was really tough for people who'd spent a lot of time preparing things to only have a few people, and it ended up being like a half an hour instead of an hour. So that 4th hour was a tough one. It's always that way, I think.
It didn't help with the glitches, and we had 3 times we rehearsed the entire thing. We had no problem practicing the breakout session. I don't know what happened, but you really need a tech savvy person. If we ever do anything like that, we really need someone with a lot of experience to keep it going smoothly. If it's possible, maybe some things happen that you just can't control.
But that last part of the day is always going to be
Hard.
The only time I saw full attendance at workshops is the very first year when Amelia, when you designed the thing around case studies, you trained people so we all knew what we were doing. People signed up in advance, and we had good participation and an even way of doing, an equal kind of way or similar way of doing things. And I think they all worked out well, but it was focused around those groups instead of just at the end. So, but the idea is that it happened, and that we survived with another year of Zoom, and
And I also wanted to point out, I thought Rebecca Rausch's final statement was
yes.
wonderful. She's an excellent speaker. I was very pleased with that.
It was fantastic. It was a great afternoon, and thank you guys for all the work that you put into that. I mean, I feel like it energized a lot of people, and there was a lot of activity on the chat, and we did get some visibility just on the chat alone. So,
and thanks to you.
Yes.
So we'll, the technical stuff aside, it was a great afternoon. I was exhausted at the end as well, Carrie, but for me, part of it was just all the prep that I put into because we got the questions in advance, but just personally for me, the time flew for me. I don't know. I looked already. Oh my God, it's the kids, my family, they went on a hike, they went to the grocery store, a couple piles of laundry were done. I'm like, what the hell, what have I been doing? I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So, I thought it was fantastic.
Maybe you should plan one of those every week so all those things will get done for you.
And I was ready to go. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Thank you guys. Any other comments or questions or feedback for Cynthia and or Amelia on the summit?
I thought it was great. I went to the breakout session that was a discussion about public safety. And when I walked away from that feeling like, it was really interesting because that particular workshop was put together by folks on EJN who had been kind of behind the real call for some kind of community conversation on race and policing. And I think that it gave me a much better idea of what kind of conversation they were looking to have when they talked about how do you think about public safety. That I thought was really an interesting lens to put on it, because it kind of talked about that, or they tried to bring out a discussion about what makes you feel safe, and also what happens when you call 911, and kind of thinking outside the box of having the police respond to every single 911 call, but that thinking about using figuring out a way of divvying up resources in the town that doesn't put all of the onus on the police to respond to such a wide variety of things, which I think is a somewhat different conversation, or at least a much less loaded conversation than I think that the town's been kind of bracing for. So it was really interesting to me to hear kind of a little bit more about what they were really hoping to talk about. So it was interesting.
Okay, so that's a good segue into an update on the community conversations on race. Jen, Katie, and I have been, what was it? I don't know. Was that our fourth meeting? Fifth? I can't keep track.
I don't know. We've been meeting since like the summer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've definitively have landed on policing right now. We're just trying to, and Chief Schlittler was at the last meeting, so gave us his perspective on what he thought was going to work and what I think more importantly, what he thought was not going to work. He was very clear about understanding the importance of these conversations, understanding the importance of building bridges, but also wanted us to have a very clear understanding of where his force, how his force was feeling. That, I think one of the big sticking points in planning these conversations is making sure that the chief and the force don't feel like they're being attacked or are going to be put on the defensive. And nobody wants that. That's not the goal of this at all. But as you all can understand, that could easily spiral into something that turns into a very ugly conversation. So this is why we're being very deliberate and thoughtful about how we're putting this together. So I think, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong. Right now, the skeleton outline is having a piece about, it's multi-tiered, history of policing in America, drilling down to the history of policing in Needham, hopefully incorporating systemic racism into those educational pieces, and then potentially having small group conversations very comparable to At My Neighbor's Table with citizens and folks from the police force and law enforcement or mental health professionals, to really understand on a one-on-one, from a one-on-one perspective where what people are thinking, feeling, and try to just, everybody has a better understanding of where everybody is coming from. So it's going to be a series of conversations. And I think that's sort of, did I say that, sum that up correctly, Jen?
Yes, that's what my notes reflect as well. I think that thing that keeps drumming up in my head. I think that what we've landed on as a kind of agreeable to everybody that's on that planning committee is a great program. I still feel like it doesn't reflect the requests for conversations that I understood people wanting, but I don't know. I said, because I think that when I think about, and actually I meant to go back and watch it, the initial conversation that was held when the select board did a listening session on race back in summer of 2020. I'm trying to remember the context of the question that came up then. I think it was, in some way related to what happened with Mr. Tidwell. Not Mr. Tidwell. Oh my God, the Tidwell report. What was his name?
Marvin
Mr.
Henry.
Henry. And then when it came up, when the call for the conversation again came up, it was in the context of the town meeting where they were talking about a budget item for the police. So I'm a little bit weary because I'm afraid that what we're presenting might be great, but might not still kind of meet what the ask was. But hopefully it will be well received in the community, because I know that it seems like that it should be something that people would want to come and experience, but I don't know. I don't know if the folks in town who have been most vocal about calling for these conversations are going to be satisfied with the framework that we've got right now.
Well, I would also imagine too, especially when we get down to the smaller round table groups, I'm sure those questions are going to be asked, right? So I think in some form or another, those issues will come up. Is how I envision this happening. And I think that's part of the reason why we're having a hard time making sure that all of the stakeholders' interests are being met and everybody's, feeling like it's a safe space. It's because at very different points in time, there's no way for it to be a safe space for everybody at once. That's
what I totally agree.
So it's going to do this, and hopefully at the end we can come a little bit more to this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Does anybody else have any questions about where we're at? We're going to meet again in December, early December, to try to hammer out more details on this. Cynthia.
Yep. I know that we have recordings of meetings where some people from EJN were at Nuwari or at Select Board. So we know some of the kind of questions those folks are raising. I wonder if there's any way of, might even be anonymously, getting people to write down their questions. I don't know, a box at the library or town hall somewhere, just write them down. And so, because there are a lot of people who don't come to those meetings, who maybe have a friend who's been arrested, or maybe have come from a situation where they've had different experience with the police than perhaps they would in Needham. So it's not like starting a meeting asking for questions, but just to try to collect more of what's out there in the community. And I don't really know how you do that, but just, we don't want to be reading blogs in the newspaper.
Marlene?
Just was wondering if when you think you'll have this. Like, are you looking towards a certain date, or you're not there yet?
Earlier in the year, or I'm hoping end of Jan, early Feb, something like that.
Okay, I just didn't know. I know you got a slow start. I was just curious.
Like maybe with the holiday, February-ish.
Okay.
I mean, we want to push through this, right? I think everybody's sort of, okay, we have to move past this planning. So I think that's the goal. Bud, did you have a question or comment?
I was going to ask timing of it also, but the other thing is with Cynthia's suggestion, rather than questions, it sounded like she was saying that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Cynthia, is statements, people giving examples of things that have, transpired in their lives. Is that what you meant, Cynthia?
Both, because somebody was saying, I can't really trust the police. Can we trust the police? Because blah, blah, blah. But to really to have it as questions, but people will often back it up with an experience.
I think that's
But
something that we.
did you
can bring
have in
up.
mind that the people would come, same people would come to these 3 meetings, or they would just be standalone? Or was that all happening in one meeting? The history of policing in America and Needham and systemic racism, and then small group, was that all?
No,
in one?
this is a series of conversation, a series of events.
But if these standalone things, people aren't like signing up to be coming to all of them.
I don't know
Right,
that
that-
we've made any particular decision about that yet, but
Yeah, okay. Just thought.
I mean, ideally, that was the whole kind of point of front loading the beginning with education, that hopefully they're getting some of that before we sit down to talk about it, but who knows?
Okay, we'll keep you guys posted. We're meeting with them before our next HRC meeting. Quickly, discrimination complaint process. We were supposed to meet with the select board, the subcommittee last Friday, but the meeting was abruptly canceled because somebody had a conflict. So we're exactly where we were a month ago. Katie is trying to figure out a time when we can meet and present. So hopefully that will be sooner rather than later.
Tina, is that like at a regular select board meeting, or is it like a special?
Sorry, not the select board meeting. It was a chair, vice chair meeting
Chairs,
first.
yeah.
So that would be with Matt and Marianne. Before we took it to everybody else. Okay, vacant seats. We're on to the administrative stuff. Interviews are happening soon, so hopefully we will have our seats filled by the end of the year. Minute takers, did that second survey work, you guys? It did? Oh my God.
I got it 4 times.
Just fill it out once.
I did.
Great, so.
It's a
I'll
good
just
way to
double-
do it, though.
I'll just double check to make sure it's all filled out. If there are any, I think there might have been 1 extra slot, so we can, Renaz, maybe you can take that slot. But I'll see what the responses were and see if.
I didn't have time to look it up today, but I'm sure I can sign up to. Or if I didn't already, I can't remember. I tried to find it a few weeks ago,
Okay,
but I'm good for one if I can find it later tonight.
okay.
It went out today, Cynthia. You don't have to go digging. It would have been an email today.
Yeah, I just didn't have time. I ended up at a doctor's appointment and I'm now much better.
Thank you. Okay, announcements. The Interfaith Trans Day of Remembrance is this Saturday. I scheduled our Facebook post to go live tomorrow, I believe, or today. I may have gone live today. And then the actual video is not going to get posted until Saturday at 4 p.m. Is that correct, Cynthia? Okay, so
Yes.
so there's a link in the agenda, and there's also on our Facebook page that the link is there as well, and just gives a little bit of information about the event. Sunday is a virtual Thanksgiving it's a community interfaith service hosted by the Needham Interfaith Clergy Association. And then looking out to January, at my neighbor's table, empowering yourself to have challenging conversations. Marlene, did you want to give a little bit more information about that?
Not really, Amelia's been working on it very hard also. She's doing everything. But I guess we picked this topic because there's such division in this country, and how do you talk to people? So that's why, and I think based on, we have another meeting with the speaker, but based on what the speaker is saying, it's going to be a lot of discussion, a lot of time for people to talk to each other and deal with some cases around how to talk about these difficult topics.
I would have loved this now because I have to go home to my family for Christmas.
Or before Thanksgiving.
So maybe I won't go home for Christmas. Maybe I'll wait, we'll do this, and we can push Christmas out to like February.
But you can also use it, for the 2022 midterm elections when you're talking to people.
Yeah, it's gonna come in handy for life, basically. Great. So that sounds amazing. That's gonna be on January 23rd, and we'll start, whatever you guys want us to do or need from us as far as cross promotion. When you get your marketing materials ready to go, send it all over, and we'll post it everywhere.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody else have anything? It's 9:00.
Yes, one other thing. Don't forget to vote. It's a one thing that you're voting for. It's to fill the select board position. It's going to be low voter turnout. Please get your friends and your neighbors to vote. We really need to have the community come out.
It will be my first vote as a US citizen, so I'm gonna be there. Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Don't forget to get your I voted sticker, Renaz.
Yeah, oh, sure. I'll meet you there. Are you gonna be there? Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody, Amelia?
Yes, you mentioned Facebook. I just want to thank Carrie. I think you've been carrying the load on Facebook. It looks wonderful. And also,
Tina's been posting too. It's not just me, actually.
great. It really looks great. And it's so up to date and timely. And Carrie, thank you so much for being there at the Voices in Unity table and representing the Human Rights Committee. Several people have approached me and said that it was, they felt welcome and connected to Human Rights Committee because of that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Anything else?
Adjourn.
Can I have
Second,
a second? Okay,
second,
Bud,
Go Patriots.
we'll take roll call. Bud,
yes.
Cynthia,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes,
and thank you for minutes tonight, Julie. Marlene,
no problem.
Yes.
Carrie,
Yeah.
Amelia,
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you, Miles, very much.
Fabulous, really good meeting, a lot
Thank you,
of
Tina.
thought and a lot of really good input.
Okay,
Thank you,
we'll
Tina.
start circulating emails shortly.
Good night. Happy
That's something for
Thanksgiving.
me. Same to you
Yes.
guys. Thank you. Bye.
Right.